There's going to be another presentation coming up in the very near future, and the presenter himself is with us this morning, a good friend and man I greatly admire for his work. We say good morning to Ric Mixter. Ric, good morning to you.
Art Lewis, I can't believe I get to be on your show twice during the winter. This is a true honor, my brother.
I'll send you the bill. No.
Please do.
No. Yeah, so you can hang it up and say, look what I'm ignoring.
It'll be suitable for framing.
I know. Well, let's start out just to give an overview, and we'll go back to it again later on in the interview. But you're going to be up in this area this weekend, right?
I'm so excited to return to Bay County, and especially the mall museum that they actually have set up for the Saginaw River Museum, or the Saginaw River Marine Historical Society, and it's right in the Bay City Town Center.
Yep.
And so to be able to present right there next to all of these incredible artifacts from the marine industry on that river, it's got an amazing history, and I'll just kind of bring another chapter.
When are you doing it?
We'll do that Saturday at 6:30 in the evening, and I highly encourage people to get there early because I think we're going to be packed to the gills there. It's not super a lot of room, but I think it'll be amazing. And they're talking about already putting monitors out into the hallway. So can stand next to Zale's jewelry and listen to Ric talk about lighthouses around the Great Lakes.
So I should get there probably 4 o'clock to get a seat, huh?
You always have a seat of honor, my friend.
I actually thought about it. I might be able to do it.
I would be thrilled. Good topics, too.
So what is the presentation about? Let's talk about those topics.
You bet. The lighthouses, like the ones that they actually take care of, the Saginaw River Range Light, are pretty easy and accessible. I mean, they do have a little bit of restriction because Dow Chemical owns the property, and they're opening it up more now. But the lights I'm going to talk about are the ones you can't get to, the offshore outposts that are 40, 50, 60 miles out in the middle of the lake that guard these reefs that, ships don't want to run into. So I just found it fascinating, these people that live there and really dedicated their lives to keep these lighthouses and keep the waterways safe. So we'll talk about those remote lighthouses that you can't normally see and some of the stories behind them.
And some of those, correct me if I'm wrong, Ric, but didn't some of those get sold privately? They
do, yeah. Now that we have GPS and better tracking than we've ever had, these lighthouses, many of which were built in the 1870s, they're outmoded, and unfortunately, they need a lot of love now because they really haven't been upkept the way that they used to be by the lighthouse service back in the day.
Yeah.
So, now they're being sold to private interests and societies, like Spectacle Reef has one, and Detour Reef we'll talk about as well. They put $1 million into their lighthouse to get it refurbished and kind of operate as almost like a bed and breakfast, but it's more of a keeper program, that you can visit and stay.
Yeah, I have a friend that bought one granite light. In Superior, and he does not set it up as a bed and breakfast, but I know he's got it totally refurbished and cameras on it and everything else.
Oh, it's right off Marquette. It's gorgeous, and I'm jealous of his cabin with the best view in the entire world.
Yeah, well, he's quite a guy, to say the least. How many of these lighthouses are there? I mean, it's interesting because people don't think of them. We think of the lights that we can see and get to. How many are there out in the lakes?
We have, easily over 40 that are, kind of remote that are difficult to see. Michigan leads the pack as far as states for lighthouses. 129 were originally kind of illuminated. Many of them shut down as, they didn't no longer need them. But the offshore ones, they still do illuminate, and they use remote automation. There's no longer people on these. So they do have to kind of share custody with the Coast Guard, who are still maintaining these lights. But the inside of them have been gutted, so there's little maintenance for the Coast Guard. So this is something I think that you see in like Spectacle Reef is really adding a lot of cleanup and putting beds in there and stuff, because it is a fantastic place to experience the Great Lakes, to be out there like these men did so many years ago.
Now, some of these lights that they're selling privately, are they still in commission?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, the ones especially that are marking, entrances to harbors and such. And when you have like Standard Rock, which is 45, 50 miles out in the middle of Lake Superior off of Marquette, it actually shows a mountain peak that the water is 800 feet deep, and then all of a sudden there's a rock sticking up that a ship could run into. So these are still legitimate hazards, and they want to keep a light on it. It's just, most ships now use GPS to accurately wind their way around these obstacles, but it's nice to have something there that says, really, don't go here. This is not a good spot to be.
At what point in history did we start building these lighthouses?
It really started, we initially on the Great Lakes put out light ships that were kind of portable lighthouses that would go out there. So if we look at Waugoshance, that's up in the Straits. All these things were very early on marked by ships because it was easy to put them out there, anchor them, and then take them back in during the winter. But they realized that was a lot of work. So they built up these big, really monuments, if you will. They had to be specially designed to take the ice that would crunch these lighthouses down easily, packing up 40 feet high in some places in the Straits. So the design is very unique. And by the 1890s into the 1900s, we had a lot of lighthouses that were in full operation, especially as Escanaba opened up to move iron ore. We no longer have Escanaba as an ore port, so these lighthouses aren't as desperately needed as they were back at the turn of the century. So those have all kind of fallen down, and sadly, some of them, they'll never be repaired because it's just so far out in the middle of nowhere.
And we should distinguish these from range lights like there is on Saginaw Bay coming down toward Bay City. You have range lights that will keep you in the channel off in the distance, but those are not lighthouses. Those are onshore, right?
Oh, and I think they're in our hearts as lighthouses. Anything
that's
with a
true.
Beacon. Yeah, so the range light, I think, will be, very much defended as being a fantastic lighthouse that must be saved, and I'm along with them. The rear range light being the last of the series to guide these ships in so they can line up the lights and safely get through that snaky corridor that we have out in Saginaw Bay to get, into the river system. So, yeah, they're definitely not, I think, as monolithic as we see in the big limestone ones like Standard and Spectacle, but they certainly hold our hearts as a lighthouse often is. People just are attracted to these beacons, almost like moths to a flashlight. They love these beacons, and I can see why.
All right. We're going to try something, folks. Rick doesn't know this, but we're going to try this anyway. If you have any questions about lighthouses, shipwrecks, and the like, you can give us a call and talk to Rick himself. And you can do that at 989-752-6111 and join in the conversation. I think that'd be fun to try and see if we can get some response from our listeners. And got to be a lot of questions about the Great Lakes and Great Lakes shipping and all of that. And Rick is the expert. We will take a break. Hang on, Rick, and we'll be back. Ric Mixter with us this morning. He'll be in Bay City this Saturday. We'll tell you more about that as we go along.
What's the most
on 100.5 and 790 News Radio WSGW.
All right, we're back with you. We're talking to Ric Mixter. He's going to be in town Saturday at the Bay City Town Center for the Marine Historical Society here in the area. And we're talking about that this morning. But as I said, we would be happy to take some calls and see if you can put Rick on the spot. That's the reason for it. No.
I love it.
But we have one waiting for us. This is Gary in Bridgeport. Gary, good morning. You're on with Ric Mixter.
Good morning, Art and Rick. This summer, my brother-in-law and I and my daughter were up at Traverse City at Mission Point, and they just finished refurbishing that one up there. It was in really good shape when they got it done. It was beautiful. And you go inside, and you get to crawl all the way up if you want. You can crawl all the way up through it. Now, it's very small. It's got a real small ladder. You can barely get up through it. But it's a beautiful sight once you get up in there. And those lighthouses, they're called Michigan's Castles. And I'm glad that there's an organization out there that are refurbishing these and keeping them up because there's something to see.
Rick?
Absolutely, Gary. That one especially, the location is so gorgeous. It was built up in 1870. I'll tell you what really makes it happen, though, are the volunteers, or the people that actually are in the societies. And that's why it's so crucial for people like you, Gary, that, buy these memberships, get involved with these societies to make sure that those dollars get in there. It's not cheap to paint even a lighthouse, much less totally remodel it. So pick a favorite lighthouse, make sure that you join their societies, and put your money where our mouths are to say we want to protect these lights. And there's a lot of societies, a lot of different lights to actually do that.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think that they're much worth saving for future generations.
I agree with you.
Histories behind them.
Absolutely.
Great.
Good talking to you,
Gary. Thanks.
Likewise, Gary.
Bye.
Bye now. All right. There you go. And, from what he said, Rick, with the staircase and being very narrow or anything, these places don't sound like they'd be very good for somebody with claustrophobia.
No, and any kind of mobility difficulties, honestly, these were designed and many of them have 80 plus stairs to get to the top, so sadly it's not for everybody, but many of the programs actually have videos too that you can actually, go up there. So if you do have an issue with claustrophobia or especially going up and down, the multitude of stairs that these poor keepers had to do over and over and over again to keep those lights lit. There are opportunities, I think, for everybody to see, but not get up.
All right, let's chat with Errol in Saginaw. Errol, good morning. You're on with Rick.
Rick, are you just looking for something to do for finding these new shipwrecks to go play around with, buddy?
Honestly, they're finding so many now. I just love the stories. I mean, the tragedy is that they end up on the bottom, but the worst tragedy is that we'd forget about them. So, Errol, my job is to make sure we don't.
How deep is the one that they just found in Lake Superior? Is it 500 feet or more?
Yeah, the nucleus is the latest one that's been released. And believe it or not, the Great Lakes Shipwrecks Historical Society has found almost a dozen. The joke was that Daryl, their operator up there, the marine operator, was going to make a calendar with all the boats that he was finding down there. And it's been very significant. The last whaleback was discovered, the nucleus, and we're looking at, the fleet of lumber vessels too that will be featured on National Geographic in just a couple of days here. So it's very exciting.
How come you don't come out with a calendar, sir? You have some spare time, sir.
I do have way too much spare time, but I'm going to try to finish my next book.
Yeah, this is a long way from scuba diving along the Sabre River picking up junk, ain't it, buddy?
I'll tell you, what an opportunity, though. There's so many treasures there, as you know, and those date back to literally our first people. So it's amazing to find those in the river.
Yeah.
Were you up there when we were cleaning the Sabo and the guy from Bay City from the scuba club found the grenade and he's holding it up?
I was not.
And he said, "Look what I got."
I would have run away, my friend.
Yeah,
you won't be alone.
Another place to stand. God, it's nice talking to you again.
All right.
Likewise.
Thanks, Errol.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. So, Rick, how many shipwrecks do we know occurred, but we haven't found the ships? How many undetected ships are on the bottom of the Great Lakes?
There's easily 200 that we don't know about, and probably more. As we look at all of the records that are down there, we know the modern stuff. Anything over 400 feet, we probably have less than 50 of those. But the greatest, the biggest shipwreck from the 1913 storm, the Carruthers, is 550 feet long in Lake Huron, and we can't find it. So no matter how big they are, the Steinbrenner being another one that went down in 53. They're deep, and that's what really makes them difficult, because not only is it to find it, but then what kind of technology do you have to go that deep to look at it? And that's limited to only a couple people.
But that's, it would seem in this day and age with side scanning sonar and all of the technology that's out there, we ought to be able to spot these things.
And that's what's happening. I mean, we can even see them from Google Maps, and that's how many of them are being discovered. I'd say the overwhelming majority of them are being discovered by people that are just going through and finding clear water days on Google Maps and finding them. But yes, the new sonars can practically tell you what kind of fish are underneath your boat. So to be able to tell a three-masted schooner, you can almost guess what ship it is when you find it, because of the cool technology. And it's getting cheaper by the day.
All right, let's talk to Joe in Saginaw. Joe, you're on with Ric Mixter. Good morning.
Hi. Hey, I can't remember who the author was, but there was an author, a Michigan author, that wrote quite a lot about the early lighthouses and the fact that women sometimes managed the lighthouses during the Civil War because the men had gone all off to, with the Michigan soldiers off to the Civil War. But I can't remember the author's name. I just wondered if you were familiar with.
Oh, you bet. There's been some great authors who've written about lighthouses, from Terry Pepper to Wes Oleszkowski, but the women in the lighthouse story was told by Pat Mayar. She's amazing. She used to be our publisher for Michigan History Magazine, which I've written many articles for. So Pat's book on women in the lighthouses is unbelievable. Yeah,
but they also described, how the mirrors and so forth were designed because they didn't have electric lights, so they had to go out there and light the lights up at night and so forth. And,
and just the messy job that it was to have to keep them clean, with the fuel that was burning would leave, soot.
Oh, right. They had to clean them all the time.
That's interesting because we tend to forget these lighthouses. Some of them were built before there was electricity.
They were using whale oil in many times. So, that's pretty incredible. And that's why they call them wickies. The old keepers were called wickies because they had wicks that they had to keep trimmed and clean so they would burn cleanly.
They were basically lanterns, with it.
Big ones.
They had to keep cleaning. Yeah, big lanterns and so forth.
Interesting.
Well, thanks to Fresnel, we actually had better lenses. With a small output of a light, like a candle, you could literally light it because of the Fresnel lenses that would amplify and focus that light. So it's a really cool design.
Lenses were the big thing when they invented those lenses, but they had to be cleaned all the time too.
You bet. Full-time job.
All right.
All right.
Joe, thanks. Appreciate the call.
Who was the author again that wrote about the women?
Pat Mayar. Pat Mayar.
Pat Mayar. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Good enough, Joe. Thanks. Bye-bye now. All right, we'll be back. Rick, hang on. And lines are open for you if you have questions or you want to converse with Ric Mixter about the Great Lakes and shipwrecks and lighthouses. 989-752-6111, the number to call. All right, we're back with you here on WSGW. We are chatting with Ric Mixter. He's got a presentation coming up this weekend that we will remind you of toward the end of the hour here. But more calls for Rick. If you have any questions about Great Lakes shipping and lighthouses and the like, give us a call at 989-752-6111. Rick, before we get back to the phones, what was considered the heyday of shipping on the Great Lakes? Or is there such a thing?
Arguments, I think, with everybody on when the real heyday was. We certainly see peaks and valleys. As iron ore comes in, we've never moved as much iron ore with these 1,000-footers that are out now. So it could be argued now. But if you look at, the thousands of boats that were on before our highway system was instituted and the schooners that were available before we even had railroads, you could easily pick any of them. I'm doing a complete look into the salt industry in just Saginaw and Bay City, where we led almost the world in salt production using shipping only. So I think that there's a bunch of different opportunities, and that's what always fascinates me to study each chapter.
All right, this is John in Bay City. John, good morning. You're on with Ric Mixter.
Good morning, Rick.
Hi, John.
My question is, lighthouses and rear range lighthouses. It's my understanding that the rear range system was invented on the Saginaw River. Is that true?
Not true, but it's a great, I think a great tie-in. A lot of people have put it to a young boy named DeWitt Braun that actually was the first guy to kind of hang a lantern and do it. But we had been using range systems like that before. I think to really put it together into a lighthouse system, yes, it was among the earliest on the Great Lakes for sure. In fact, you might even put it as one of the first there. But they definitely have been using range systems before that. But it is a cool story about the 16-year-old that would collect money from the shipping industry, to make it safe for these boats to come up the winding river. And I love the story for sure.
Well, thank you.
All right, John.
You betcha.
Thanks for calling. Bye-bye now.
Goodbye.
And let's talk to Cindy in Bay City. Cindy, good morning.
Good morning. I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. My husband and I photographed all the lighthouses on the upper Great Lakes following the Northern Lights by Charles Hyde. We photographed all of them except for the one around Gary, Indiana. We started out with doing the ones on land and then ended up having to buy a boat so we could get to the elusive ones. And it's been a real interesting hobby for us over a 20-year period. Unfortunately, he passed, but I wanted to say that I'm having the Saginaw River rear range light etched on his headstone.
Oh, no kidding.
That's amazing.
Wow.
And what a tribute to be able to capture those into not only a photograph, but to use the Northern Lights behind it. That takes a complete, not only a creativity, but a technical knowledge of cameras for sure, Cindy.
Cindy, let me ask Cindy, have you published any of those photos or thought about a book or something?
No, I have not. I have them all in albums, and some of them we had made, blown up and had framed, but no, and my children aren't interested in them, so I'm really not sure what I'm going to do with them. But like I said, I have tons and tons, and I wrote a chronology as we were in the boat on all of them that we visited. So I have quite an interesting assortment of things.
Yeah, I'm sure Rick, you would confirm this. I'm sure the Marine Historical Society would be interested, to say the least.
They would be thrilled, especially with the stories, and to create a web presence with a lot of that too would be amazing, to be able to put your story along with them, because it's more than just a picture. It's the story that goes behind it. I think you found how exciting it is to bring that story back to life.
Absolutely. I mean, we just really enjoyed it. We said we weren't golfers, so we had to do something. So we bought a boat. So it was a real interesting hobby.
You still have the boat?
No.
No.
No, unfortunately we don't. So,
but you have all the memories and all the pictures, and that's good.
Right, I do. So I just wanted to share that, and I think, did you say it's 6:30 on Saturday?
It is 6:30 at the mall. Yep, it'll be fantastic. Right next to Zoll's is what I understand. So
I know where it is. So I will make attempt to be there.
I would love to see you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye. Yep. Bye.
Bye, Cindy. All right. Well, that gives us the opportunity, since she brought it up, remind everybody again where you'll be and what you'll be talking about.
It's the only mall I know with a lighthouse on their logo. The Bay City Town Center has a lighthouse. So I'll be there on Saturday at 6:30 talking about the offshore lights. So we're talking about the explosion at Standard Rock. I actually interviewed one of the guys that survived it. The Spectacle Reef, which was one of the engineering marvels of the world. It was at the World's Fair, the technology that they used to build it. So lots of neat stories.
Rick, let me ask, I don't think I've ever asked you this. If an organization wanted to contract you for speaking engagement, how would they get a hold of you?
Oh, easily through my website. You can go to lakefury.com or shipwreckpodcast.com, or rick@airworthy.tv is my email. And I do quite a few lectures all around the Great Lakes, and we're even in negotiations to do some cruises, which would be fantastic.
Oh,
as
really?
Well.
Like on the Great Lakes cruise ships?
Yep, and even on the Detroit River, we've been talking.
Yeah.
So there's some neat opportunities out there, and to be able to be out there live, that's what I really love doing. So it'll be fantastic to share that.
All right, hang on, and we'll be back. We're talking to Ric Mixter. He is an underwater videographer and researcher extraordinaire. Known him for many, many decades, and not a finer individual do I know. And we'll be back with Rick, and still have time to take another call or two from you.
Right here on WSGW 790 AM and 100.5 FM.
All right. Another voice from the TP5 days. We're talking to Ric Mixter. And, of course, we just heard from Mike Avery. Were you guys there together?
This partner of mine, too, when I first started Airworthy. So I'd love to hear his voice.
Yeah, he's doing a phenomenal job. All right, so I want to talk a little bit more about this presentation Saturday at the Bay City Town Center. Specifically, what are you going to be talking about or the visuals? What's it like to go to one of your lectures?
Oh boy, I love having the big video screen because, as everybody knows, I work for TV5 and TV12, and I love bringing video in. So we'll not only see the lighthouses and get a tour of many of them, we'll hear from the keepers that actually live there. And in some cases, some of these keepers spent months there without relief because they're so remote. And that's what's unique to these ones that don't have roads going to them when they're in the middle of the lake. So we'll definitely explore Standard Rock, the most remote lighthouse in the United States. It's out in Lake Superior. We'll talk about Spectacle, which was built out of a limestone quarry. So million-year-old fossils that actually built up this lighthouse. We'll talk about Huron Island, where a keeper was actually hit by a shipwreck and busted his shoulder. So these stories are just so captivating. And for me, because these are lighthouses that don't get as much love, they're farther away. I think it's important that we keep them in mind's eye. And that's how I did this for PBS early on, Offshore Outposts. And it's been a very popular talk. And with the River Historical Society, with their efforts they've been doing at the lighthouse there at the rear range, it fits in perfect.
So let me ask you this, Rick. You've been at this for quite some time. What's on your wish list that you haven't been able to do?
Oh boy, finding the next shipwreck is always the best.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, there's so many chapters that are unwritten yet. And even as I finished my Bottled Goodbyes book, we were talking about the Michigan in one of the chapters, and I was on board a boat that found the Michigan. So it's so exhilarating to be there when you're the first person, and sobering because these are grave sites for people who lost their lives delivering these cargoes. And for me, it's just that roller coaster of emotion. And then being able to bring these stories to light and to put them into a way that people can understand them. That's been my real, thrill to do it. And it's not me that I think is the hero in any of this stuff. It's those amazing people who are the ones that survived the shipwreck, that lived on the lighthouse, that were part of the men and the women that rescue these people daily. Those are my heroes. And those are the ones I like to showcase in my talks.
How much time are you spending underwater these days?
Not enough. I wish there was more, but honestly, with our technology, I'm on the board of directors for the Shipwreck Society at Whitefish Point, and they've got so much amazing technology to go deep into cold water. I like that better. It's nice to be able to have that connection to touch it, to visit the site personally, but truthfully, it's so much safer, and I can spend more time down there if I use a robot. So I think that's really where I get the most really quality time down there, but I'll try to get into my gear because it's just so much fun to be weightless. And I hope that other of your listeners, would try it as well. It's a fantastic sport, no matter what your age, and the gear is so much more manageable now. It's a sport that we hope we can get more people involved in.
How deep have you gone, and how deep could you go?
I can do about 165 on air. I'm not qualified to go any deeper because the air at that depth is toxic. It makes you into almost a narcotic. They call it narcosis, as a matter of fact. Yeah. So 165 feet. I've been down to the Spengler, which is in near Alpena, just to see a ship's wheel, and I was out of my mind in just lunacy from what the pressure does to you. So you can take training and go to helium that will offset those and go. You can go deeper. There's people that even have full, submarines we know that can go deeper as well. Right. So the technology is getting better and faster, and I think safer. And I think that's really revolutionizing the sport. It's a good time to learn how to scuba dive for sure. How long does it take? Very long? Yeah, two weekends. Yeah, you do one. It's a lot of classroom and there's a little bit of math. I'm not going to lie. We both fly too, and I know it was harder. The math for being a pilot was a lot harder than what it takes to be a diver. But it's a serious sport. You're going to a place where you can't breathe, so you've got to take it very seriously. And open water training is very important, that you actually get into a lake and not just a pool. And that's part of the training. So that limits when you can do it to actually get your open water. And it's just so much fun. Oh, Rick, look, I want to thank you for spending the hour with us this morning, as always. And we remind everybody this Saturday, 6:30, Bay City Town Center in the River Historical Museum area. Rick will be there. Any charge? No charge at all. Just if you would like to make a donation, I know that group would appreciate it. Sure. Every dollar counts, and as they try to change over that lighthouse and keep the museum up. Absolutely.
All right, my friend. If I don't see you Saturday, although I might, we'll be in touch in the future. As always.
My fingers are crossed. Let me know if you ever want to talk history.
I will. Rick,
thank you, Art.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
You too, sir.
Ric Mixter, and we thank him for joining us here on WSGW. If you have never seen one of his presentations, trust me, it's worth your time.